Good morning, Romel Santiago here once again. My other cat is joining us today, so if you see her jumping around, she is my demon, and she will get into anything if left unchecked. So, all that to the side. Today we're actually going to be talking about consent. So, consent can be taken in lots and lots of different ways. But the first direction I want to make sure that I address is consent within the therapeutic relationship. Most folks are unaware that consent, um, the speech that I give, confidentiality means that I cannot disclose anything that you and me talk about within this session. The only time I can disclose what we talk about is if you tell me that you're going to hurt or kill yourself, you tell me that you're going to hurt or kill someone else, you tell me that a vulnerable person, such as elderly person with disabilities, or a child is being harmed in any way, then I have to tell somebody. The only other time that I can tell somebody is if I'm subpoenaed by a court of law with a judge's signature, not just the signature from a lawyer, um, or if you give me consent in terms of what we call a release of information, then I can only tell that particular person or entity the bare minimum of what you allow me to tell them. Now, in the paperwork and also what I have tried to tell clients is that if you are paying through insurance, I also have to submit my documentation to the insurance company, which means that I have to prove to the insurance company that therapy is clinically necessary for you and what you're coming to see me for. That being said, I keep all my notes probably as vague as possible, just so the insurance company doesn't know what specifically we're talking about because it's none of their business. Most of the folks that work for the insurance company in terms of and are going to read these notes are not licensed clinicians. They are, I think the requirement is a high school diploma. So I don't think that it's ethical for an insurance company to know specifically what it is that we're talking about. So when we talk about consent, something to know is that if you are paying with insurance, that your insurance company, in order to pay for the sessions, does have access and does request our documentation. If we do not send that to them, they then essentially they're not going to pay, which means you're responsible. And if you're responsible, it's no longer you are responsible for the full session fee and not the contracted amount. So, in terms of consent, that's one of the big things that I want to make sure gets covered because a lot of folks do not understand some of the ramifications of paying with insurance. That also means that the first session I have to give you a diagnosis. Um, and I have to give you a diagnosis that is ethical, but also that the insurance will cover. Not if you're coming to me because you're having erectile dysfunction, your insurance isn't going to cover that. So oftentimes erectile dysfunction is caused by, if it's not a medical issue, then it's caused by some form of anxiety, and so the covered diagnosis would be anxiety, generalized anxiety, or adjustment disorder with anxious features. But that's all the geeky nerdy shit. But why I bring that up is because consent means that every party has full, transparent access to the information. Whether this is a therapeutic relationship, a monogamous relationship, ethical non monogamous relationship, romantic entanglement, platonic relationship, everybody needs to be able to have full, transparent access to all information that they need in order to make a decision. If I'm out dating and I'm dating 6 people, I'm not committed to any of them, but how many of those people am I hiding information from? Now, there's a difference between just putting out everything, um, and in an effort to just try to be as honest as possible, but we still have to tease apart, well, what's the purpose of you just putting out everything? Does everybody absolutely have to have this particular information? When it comes to certain medical conditions, and I do a lot of work with some individuals who do have chronic illnesses like HIV. So if we're dating somebody, at what point do I then begin having that conversation about HIV status? Right? Is that something that happens on the first date or the fifth date or before or after we engage in sexual activity? All of that, all of that is information that the other person does need, but in order to keep ourselves safe and protected, we also have to be aware of how this information, one, can be used, and two, how this information can be detrimental to ourselves or the other person. There's been plenty of stories in the newspaper about somebody disclosing their status, and then their life then becomes at risk. Their reputation becomes at risk. Their standing in the community becomes at risk. So we need to, one, be able to give access, full transparent access to everybody who is involved in order for them to make their decision to either remain or to transition out, as well as how do we make sure that the information that does get out is one, safe and secure. So we need to be able to make sure that we're asking ourselves some of these questions. One, how can I be as ethical as possible and transparent as possible? But two, how do I make sure that I'm safe? How do I make sure that I'm secure? If I am somebody who is dating six people at the same time, all of them should know that, hey, we are not in an exclusive commitment because right now we are in the process of getting to know each other. So the time that I'm allocating to you is your time. However, I do have a life and I am exploring options. Same thing when we're interviewing for jobs. The job that you're interviewing at doesn't need to know that you're interviewing at six other ones, but there's no commitment there. So they do need to know, hey, I appreciate the time that you're carving out for me. I hope you appreciate the time that I'm carving out for you. There's no commitment at this moment. We're just trying to get a better understanding of, are we a good fit together? From there, we then get an opportunity to decide, hey, do I move forward with this? And the further I move forward with, the more information about who I am as a person and my connectedness. There's a wonderful, hilarious movie called Baby Mama, if any of you have seen that, with Tina Fey. And the opening scene is her sitting down at a date, just vomiting all of the things that she's, I want a baby now. This is the first date, and the guy just gets up and leaves, right? We want to we want to understand that not everybody has permission or access to all the information in the very first meeting. However, how are we making sure that we're not hiding, we're not manipulating, or we're not taking advantage of other people? How are we making sure that we are giving them the as much information as they need during each situation so that they can make their own independent choice, and that they're giving, or we're asking questions so that we can obtain as much information as we need in order to be able to make the, the best choice for us. So I know this particular video has went way over 5 minutes, but when we talk about consent, there's so many facets to this particular topic and so many ways that we navigate the topic of consent ethically and non-ethically on a day-to-day basis. So the first thing that I'm going to encourage you to do is to begin navigating the rest of this day and ask yourself, every time that you answer a question or that you're putting yourself out there, on a scale of 1 to 10, how honest am I being right now? 1, not at all. 10, the most honest I possible. But again, it's not just being honest for the sake of being honest. The information that I am holding back on, why am I holding this particular information back? Is it because I'm afraid that the other person's going to leave? Am I afraid that the other person's not going to like this information? Or is it because this information in this particular moment, it, the other person should not have access to for these reasons? However, this is when I plan on disclosing this particular information. We always want to make sure that we have a plan. If we're holding information back, what is our plan to make sure that that information gets presented? It's not about holding information for the sake of holding it. It's about sharing this information when it's safe and when the time is right, not as a way to manipulate or hold hostage anybody. So I'm going to encourage you just to begin asking yourself some of those questions on how you're hoarding information based off of your fears and own insecurities versus what other people should have access to. So, all that being said, we do have to pause, but I hope you all have a wonderful, amazing rest of this beautiful day, and I will see you soon.